January 6, 2018, just a little bit after 3 o'clock. Thanks everybody for being here. We got a packed house, and we got some guests in the audience. Always nice to see new faces, so thank you all for being here. All right, doing the roll call real quick. Starting off to my right, Jeff Schmerker is here. We've got Peter Dracos, Danny Tannenbaum, myself, Ryan Uris. To my left, Bob Wachtel. Sorry, Gene Schmitz. Sorry, Gene, I was looking at someone else's last name. Robin Welling. And Britt Arneson is absent at the moment. And then Corey Simonson. All right, we might as well introduce all the folks in the audience here too. If would mind is
Ben Weiss, Bicycle Pedestrian Program Manager.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks, Tara.
Jason Long, Jag Radio Baby.
Thanks, Jason. All right, thanks, Nicole. And then I'd like to introduce you guys to Kim. Kim, I don't know your last name, sorry. Hutchison, thank you. Kim is took over Logan's position. What's the title of the position, Ben?
Admin, Program Assistant with Missoula in Motion.
All right, Missoula Motion Program Assistant. So welcome, Kim. Thanks for being here and taking minutes for us. All right, let's move on to the approval of the previous minutes. You've got a copy right in front of you. Bob gives it a thumbs up. I had just two quick things, but I'll let anybody else go if you saw anything. The only quick thing, Kim, another person that was present at the meeting was Ginny Merriam, our City Communications Director. And then I had just a quick clarification or question, rather, kind of for Ben and Kim. In 6.3.1, what was it? When we were talking about 5th and 6th, there's a line that says, kind of the second sentence, studies for this project found that traffic volume on both two-lane roads combined is less than other two-way roads like Third or Spruce. And when I read it, my question was, is that the hypothetical 5th, 6th being bidirectional, or the current?
No, currently 5th, 6th has two-lane, one-way roads. Maybe we need to add one-way after two-lane, just to clarify that.
I think that'd be perfect. Awesome. Yeah, thank you guys. Yep. That's kind of what I thought, but as I read it way too many times and then started mixing up all the combinations in my head, so. Awesome. That's all I had. Anybody else? We need to motion the changes amendment. All right. So we'll just accept the previous minutes as we talked about there. And anything with today's current agenda? Any additions? Switching around? Seeing none, we'll keep going. And then we got time for public comment. Is anybody out there? It's time to comment on anything not on the agenda. Perfect. All right, and then we'll move comments from city staff, agencies, boards, etc. Greg Amundson is absent today from the police, but then we'll jump right into 6.2. Ben Weiss with the Bicycle and Pedestrian Program.
All right, thank you. So, some updates from last month. I spent some time helping write a grant application to assist with the completion of the Bitterroot Trail project between North Avenue and Livingston. So MRA, the Missoula Redevelopment Agency, is undertaking that project. The designs are just about finalized. Included in that project is the diagonal crossing at South and Johnson for bicycles, and an east-west crossing, including a crossing of the railroad tracks at Central Avenue for bikes and peds. And so that piece in particular is what we were seeking grant funding for. An opportunity arose through the Rails to Trails Conservancy. We hope that they will take an interest in funding this project, as it's really a national treasure, the Bitterroot Trail, having 50 miles largely uninterrupted, and to be able to, for them to help finalize the golden spike, as it were, in the middle in that section would be a big deal, I think. So I hope that we're going to be competitive. They estimate only funding between 2 and 4% of the applications that they receive. So from that side, it's very competitive. But again, I think that this is a project that is going to really stand out to them.
Ben, is there a local match?
There is no match required as part of the grant, but we, just based on how this project is happening, it's going to be about if we were to receive the full grant funding that we asked for, it would still be about 90% local funded, 10% grant funded. So it's a drop in the bucket compared to the total project cost. We applied for $50,000. It's about a $500,000 project. And so, yeah, we'll see how that goes. We find out in April. The construction will be underway by the time we find out whether or not we receive the grant. It will be if we do receive it, it will be a good show of faith and will enable the park that's also part of that project to get completed sooner. It won't, if we don't get it, it won't impact any of the elements of the trail system itself. So really there's just a kind of win-win on this one if it comes about. I also put together a proposal to present at a conference coming up in September. It's called Walk Bike Places. It's a semi-annual, every other year conference. It's the largest conference for bike ped profession in North America. If anyone's interested in going, it's a fairly expensive one, but very valuable. And people from city and state governments, people in the private sector, consultants, engineers, planners, elected officials, advocates, and activists. Typically about 1,500 people attend this. 2 years ago it was in Vancouver, BC. Before that it was in Pittsburgh. This one's going to be in New Orleans. And so I put together a proposal to present along with Aaron Wilson and Kaya Peterson from NeighborWorks, Montana, to present on our pedestrian facilities master plan and the community development block grant that is helping provide sidewalks in the west side and Franklin and the Fort neighborhoods, and just how we're including health and equity into our transportation planning, specifically for people on foot. And so again, that's one of the tracks of this conference is health and equity, so I think that we'll likely be invited to present at that conference. Let's see. Oh, back to the grant. One of the elements that is still being decided is, and I'm going to call this up on the map so that we can look at it. That's one of the design elements that's still being kicked around is what to do on Johnson between South Ave and North Ave. So this section here. Now this is where the new park is going to be. The trail is going to come through here, and there's also going to be a non-motorized connection on Central Ave to come all the way across. This is part of our neighborhood greenway network as laid out in the bicycle facilities master plan. And so one of the thoughts here is bulb outs on both sides of the road to narrow the crossing distance and call attention to for safe crossing. But that would preclude bike lanes on Johnson Street. And so city engineering actually is currently recommending that we only put bulb outs on the park side and we add bike lanes to Johnson Street. That would require parking removal on one side of the street, The current recommendation is for that to happen on the west side of the street, leaving on-street parking along adjacent to the new park. And so again, this is still in the kind of fairly early design consideration phase, but I'd love some discussion from the board about thoughts and of the trade-offs there and what they want to see. Just some bits of information. Johnson Street is not called out as to have bike lanes in the bike facilities master plan, not because they were unwanted, just because when we were writing the plan, we thought it would be a heavier lift than apparently it's seeming like it's going to be. So it wasn't that we didn't want them. It was that A, we didn't know if we'd be able to get them there, and B, we knew that it would be challenged near Franklin School. Now, since the bike plan was written, Franklin School's bulb outs, this has been reconstructed and made a little bit narrower to accommodate bike lanes in the future. So while this project would only stripe bike lanes from South to North Ave on Johnson, Johnson Street is set up to have bike lanes continue all the way up to 3rd in the future. Gene?
Yeah, Ben, I'm noticing that the area to the west of Johnson there is more commercial than residential. That being the case, and also with the Bitterroot Trail now continuing through, I would expect actually obviously a lot less bike usage on Johnson. To me, in some ways, it seems a little, I won't say counterproductive, but it seems like incomplete, I guess, to say we're just going to take the bike lanes from south to north and then stop them when you've got essentially a much higher used route with the bike trail. So it almost seems a little superfluous to me to put the lanes in. I think in some ways the bump outs might serve a better purpose, but that's just my feelings on it.
Ben, would the narrow bulb outs near the Franklin School, would those also work at the Central Johnson intersection to accommodate for a bike lane?
Well, so we are planning a curb extension on this side. All of this curb work needs to be redone. This laydown goes away, and then these walk-ups get reconstructed to meet ADA and stuff like that. And so with this curb all getting redone, we're looking at potentially even having it bulb out all the way through this intersection because you're not allowed to park at the head of a T intersection anyway. And so it would act as parking preventer and a bulb out, so we would have bulb out on this side regardless. Basically what the current thought is, or what they're currently showing in the plan, is like a little parking preventer here upstream of the intersection so that people walking could get out there and that they just wouldn't be obstructed by any parked cars. But that would preclude putting bike lanes if you did it on both sides.
So if I'm correct, you're saying bike lanes on both sides of
And so the cross section would be parking on the park side, a bike lane, a travel lane, and a bike lane.
Given I presume Johnson is a collector,
It is.
and with our complete streets policy for collectors in the city, maintaining that with looks like minimal impact on parking, at least in this section, there would be a definite advantage in maintaining our compliance with the complete streets policy and AR 415, although I don't believe AR 415 would come into play at this point. The entire street is not being chip sealed or reconstructed in any other way. It's just a matter of, it seems to be an opportunity to get the bike lanes down in this section now, and when chip seal or other maintenance is done north from north up to 3rd, it would be the opportunity then to restripe those sections and incorporate bike lanes at that time.
and even that wouldn't be a done deal necessarily, it would be considered at that time.
Right.
Yeah.
That would be a consideration, but having the one section gives some impetus to continue it. And it is advantageous for those that are looking to go north on Johnson and then possibly further west, as opposed to taking the diagonal up the Bitterroot Trail. They can go straight north on Johnson and meet their destination then, wherever that might be.
Yep. All good points. Just zooming out a little bit, I want to show you guys just a reminder on the bike facilities plan. Schilling right here and Grant right here are both identified as neighborhood greenways, Johnson being right in between those. And so again, neighborhood greenway is a low stress, low volume neighborhood street that we would prioritize for bike ped travel by discouraging cut through travel and really just promoting it, making it a more attractive bike route for people. So any other thoughts on that?
Oh, I just wanted to echo what Bob said about, having some options. I find that I ride on the road probably 90% of the time, and I think there's plenty of people for whom the opposite might be true for them with regard to how they use trails versus on-street bike facilities. But I do think providing options and providing direct routes is really important, and that might involve more of a 90-90 kind of a shot.
Any other thoughts on that? If people, if you don't want to volunteer them right this minute, but you have thoughts tonight or something, feel free to email me. Again, this is still in the design phase, and it's really, yeah, I don't know that anything that happens will mean it can't happen in the future. It's just what are we looking at right now sort of thing.
So Ben, do you have I know it's the design phase, and I know they're trying to kind of fast track that project in general. Is there any date we would have to have our comments in, or?
I'd just say the sooner the better on that. Again, that's not, whether or not we stripe bike lanes or parking on Johnson is not going to hold up design of the park itself. All right. Okay, so now talked about the conference. We've had a couple interns in our office so far this semester. One is working primarily with Missoula in Motion on researching trip reduction ordinances from around the country. These are ordinances that basically require a new development to reduce the amount of single occupancy vehicle trips that go to and from the development, whether usually it's commercial. Some jurisdictions have them as residential also. And so we have an intern just researching, I believe, 10 such policies around the country, looking at who set them, what are the characteristics of the city or state that has adopted it, what are the reasons for adopting it, what are the impacts, what's the language in the ordinance, how effective are they at actually reducing single occupancy vehicle trips, that sort of thing, and what are some of the tools and what are some of the incentives that developers and employers have for meeting it. And so it's we're at the beginning stages and of the research, and it will result in this intern's work will result in a kind of paper written for internal use to see if it's something that we want to try and pursue locally and see if there's if it has value, and if so, is there appetite to move something like that forward, and if so, what could it look like here? So again, that we're in the early stages of that, and maybe we'll do a presentation back to the board when we have something a bit more concrete. Any questions about that? We have another intern also. This one is kind of being shared by my office and the UM Transportation Office and the Parking Commission. we're overseeing a gentleman who is researching car share programs. It's something that we've looked at several times in the past. And I don't know, 5 years ago or more, we looked at kind of the enterprise rent-a-car model. And at the time, they were not interested. They thought our community was too small. That, I think, since has changed in the wake of Uber and Lyft. I think that people are, some of those rental car companies are getting more involved in ways to do that. And so again, we're just looking at a handful of communities that have successful car share. Among them, Burlington, Vermont, and Ithaca, New York are both similar sized and or college towns. Burlington's metro area is bigger than Missoula, but the college is about the same size. Ithaca, New York is half the size of Missoula, but has 3 times the students that we have. So there are some differences, but those are two that are fairly analogous. And so again, we're just exploring what do the models look like in these communities, how effective are they, who uses them, where are cars stored, what are liability and risk for whoever's hosting it, that sort of thing. So again, we'll have some sort of paper and presentation at the end of that.
Has Missoula been approached by anyone who owns a car share company?
No, for Zipcar or Car2Go or any of those, we're off the radar. We're too small. And so it'd have to be a creative way of doing it. And so again, the rental car companies fill that market in some smaller towns. Others, Burlington, Vermont, I believe, is a standalone nonprofit, while Ithaca's might be a small local business. And so there's different models out there and how people are doing it. Also, what we have been approached by and have been continually and been always kind of pushing back is bike share companies. And again, I'm about 3 or 4 years ago, I did a lot of research into bike share, and at the time came to the conclusion that we were not a right fit yet for bike share in Missoula. Basically, it was in the kind of early days of American bike share when City Bike in New York and what's the DC one? The red ones there, Capital Bike maybe, that they required immense public investment, both in capital up front, but also in real estate space for the docks to put bikes in. And even then, they only were usually in wealthier neighborhoods or in out-of-the-way locations where people agreed that they could give up on-street parking or other right-of-way real estate. And so there were all sorts of challenges and no identified funding source locally and no identified benefits locally. At the time, the major bike share systems were appealing to people who lived in buildings that were too small to store their bikes in. They were appealing to tourism-based economies, and they were appealing to solving the first and last mile transit issue. And here we just don't have the densities of either retail or housing to, or employment or housing to really have that issue. Our city's small enough that first last mile issue, while it might be an issue in our outlying communities, those are just, or in our outlying areas on the mountain line routes, they're just not dense enough to support bike share. So we looked at it at the time and said, not quite right for us, even though it's attractive and a lot of cities are pursuing it. Well, since then, technology has changed rapidly, and no longer do systems require the docks. And so, so the bikes now are standalone. And then not only that, but there have been some new companies who said, we don't even want the city to buy in. We'll provide the bikes totally free. And we'll just, we have an interest in developing this as a company and as a mode of transportation. And so we were intrigued again. And so we met with a representative from Lime Bike, one of these dockless private bike share firms, and basically have a meeting set up for, I believe, the the 15th, the board will get an invitation, and so a representative is coming with a bike and we're gonna meet with some city folks in the morning and talk about what sorts of agreements there might be and what questions anyone has about any liability or use or, use of public right-of-way. And then we'll have kind of a more general open house in the afternoon where we'll invite you guys and other different partners of the community to kind of gauge/generate interest in bike share. But it's very possible that as early as the spring we could have bike share, like a full-blown bike share system in Missoula.
Who's the sponsor?
There isn't a spot. It's just a private company called Lime Bike. They're in Seattle now. They're actually in like 40 or more cities nationwide, and seemingly their model is based on like getting venture capital and then just putting bikes in communities and developing, kind of generating the need for them by just putting them there. And so it's different than what all of the other models have been, and they seem well positioned to make this a thing that happens.
Is that LYME?
Nope, LIME.
LIME.
Yep.
Okay.
And when were they coming to visit again?
February 15th. And I'll send out an email to the board about that. Speaking of upcoming meetings, the next pedestrian facilities master plan public meeting is on February 21st at 5:30 at the Missoula Food Bank. Everyone is invited to attend that and help weigh in on development of that plan. And let's see. Oh, last week we got some surprising news. We knew it was coming, we just didn't know when, but the signal at the intersection of Van Buren and Broadway now has a lead pedestrian interval on this leg, which means that while the light is red for the north-south direction, the pedestrian walk symbol turns on, lights up 3 seconds before these people get a green. The hope there is that pedestrians will start, or trail users essentially, because this is a trail users will start crossing the intersection before they get the green, and so more drivers will see people actually crossing the street. Failure to yield at that intersection has been an issue, and we've even seen some crashes at that location as a result of conflicts with the turning movement. Now, the lead pedestrian interval is not coupled with a right turn on red prohibition, so those drivers in that right turn lane can still make a right-hand turn on red. But the hope is that the lead pedestrian interval will, again, just put pedestrians out in the space and be more visible to those people about to make that turn. This is the first of these treatments in the state of Montana, so this was a big deal that MDT employed this year.
Is that a push to walk intersection?
It is. And that, again, that could change if we had more use, but the use, or it's definitely not every cycle do you have people waiting there. And so you do have the dominant movement here is the right turn off of the freeway. And so MDT isn't quite willing to make that a always get the walk sign yet.
I feel like I've seen a lot of jaywalking and people biking against the hand as they approach the intersection, and they think, oh, maybe I just missed pushing the button, but I'm actually okay to go. And then they go, maybe they were right, maybe they're wrong, they don't really know, because they like the lights and analyze it.
Yeah.
So people take risks. So they don't really trust the signal anymore.
Yeah, I kind of, in line with that, I was thinking there's always the old thing about unintended consequences. You give the lead to the pedestrians, and especially the bicycles, was it 3 seconds? And maybe there's another bike, a few car lengths back and said, oh, these people are going. He's going to just get himself geared up to go through and maybe catch up with them, and then the right turn signal goes, and then you've got somebody making the right turn without checking their, well, it would essentially be their blind spot if it was a bike lane, but it's a side path, so I'm just concerned that you could still have certainly and easily a right hook situation, because people in the cars making their right turn, getting ready to go, whether it's turning right on red or with the arrow, always have to do that blind spot and beyond check for the cyclists who are, and sometimes they cruise through there pretty quickly.
Yeah. So there are these signs. There's one in advance of the intersection, and there's one at the intersection mounted on the far side telling drivers that they need to yield to people in that trail. Again, there's a lot going on at this intersection. I don't know how those signs, how well they're seen by people, but Gene, that was happening already, and so this is not going to solve that problem necessarily. It's going to hopefully reduce the instances of it.
Well, in line with that, it may be probably beyond the technology and maybe the expense that it's worth in doing it. If there would be some way of doing a motion sensor or some type of a trip thing for the bicyclists that are a couple hundred feet back that are headed for that turn, that it would put on some type of a flasher to let the motorists who are looking forward and to their right, let them know that there is something coming up from behind them.
Yeah, we've looked at that and recommended it, and MDT is considering it.
Seems like a great first step. It's awesome.
Also, just wanted then to give you guys a heads up on two things that will be coming to the meeting in the not too distant future. Maybe, well, one will be March and one will either be March or April. The definite March one is that Missoula Emotional will present on their annual report. So that will hopefully answer a lot of questions about that people might have about what the city is doing to provide outreach and education about everything from safety to using your options more. And then the other one is I went to an initial meeting on the Higgins Bridge reconstruction or rehabilitation that's currently planned for 2020. And so they are going to start getting stakeholders together. They being, again, this is MDT, and the consultant is HDR. They will be getting stakeholders together and presenting at this meeting about preliminary design, either at sometime this spring, at a meeting sometime this spring. And that was my update.
All right, thanks, Ben. A lot of good stuff going on. So moving along, we're gonna talk about the roundabout policy, and Tara's gonna take it away.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tara, for those that I haven't met. I've been with the city for about 6 months. I took Dave Prescott's old position as a Planner 1 down in the Transportation Division, so nice to meet you if I haven't so far. And I've been kind of helping to coordinate the development of a new draft roundabout policy for the city of Missoula. So I'm going to give you a little bit of insight kind of on where this came from, who's been working on it, and then we'll take a look at the actual policy that we have developed so far. So just kind of a little bit of background and history on kind of why we're doing this in the first place. Montana's Comprehensive Highway Safety Plan basically goes through and identifies urban crashes as one of the biggest aspects of safety, needing attention throughout Montana. And following up on that, MDT put together a program for communities to then go in and develop their own CTSPs, their Community Transportation Safety Plans. And so this policy kind of stems out of that discussion and a couple of the points addressed in that plan. Through the CTSP, a Transportation Safety Advisory Committee was developed, and that kind of led the effort in cooperation with MDT, Cambridge Systematics, and our MPO staff, trying to head towards that goal of 0 fatalities, and it was adopted in 2013, long before I was here. Looking at some of the emphasis areas in the plan, they really mirror exactly what was in MDT's plan. The first being intersection crashes, the second being crashes involving unrestrained occupants, and the third being crashes involving impaired driving. This roundabout policy is part of the intersection crashes emphasis area, and kind of came forth from that team. So in the CTSP, there's a couple of strategies and then action steps coming off of those strategies to help accomplish these goals. Strategy 1 is to improve safety intersections with an above average number of crashes, fatalities, and serious injuries through appropriate infrastructure improvements such as signing, pavement marking, roadway improvements, lighting, that type of thing based on best practices throughout the industry. And the policy came from action step 4, which basically just said to pursue a local policy for the consideration of roundabouts at local intersections where appropriate based on review of respective jurisdictional authority. Policy must include the consideration and needs of all modes and users. One in particular thing that comes up in a lot of state and local roundabout policies is obviously the need for considerations for visually impaired users. That's the biggest safety component with roundabouts and is addressed in all the FHWA guides as well. So basically we're kind of interpreting the intent of this policy as basically when it was adopted in 2013, there really weren't any roundabouts in Montana, a couple at most. And so it was really just seeking to legitimize them as a form of traffic control improvement, and just saying that they're viable, they're appropriate when used in the right circumstances. There was a state policy similar to the one that we're putting forward that was adopted in 2005. It was a joint resolution and went through kind of acknowledging that crashes were a really large issue in Montana and kind of referenced some of the pilot programs that were going on throughout the US. Their final resolution just in essence said that we encourage local authority to construct more roundabouts, and we want everyone to hear about this. We want everyone to consider the same thing. So coming forward from the intersection crashes emphasis area team that was created through the CTSP, there was another roundabout policy committee that was developed just to basically draft out the policy, go through some of the research, and then bring it to a couple other advisory boards. So there's a list of everyone that's on it. A few of you are here and know a little bit more about it, so move forward. The committee began meeting monthly in 2017. The most recent version that you have in front of you, and you should have been emailed with the track changes, has been discussed and commented on multiple times now by STAC, the Specialized Transportation Committee. And then we've also received really just one comment from MDT on their thoughts on the whole thing. So here it is, same thing that's in front of you. Basically went through and different than the state, kind of just referenced some of our plans that it supports the goals of, looked at a couple more recent studies, and also emphasized a bit more the need to acknowledge all abilities, all users, specifically visually impaired individuals in that design. The actual resolution, again, echoes a lot of the same sentiments of the state, really looking into this being more of a support for roundabouts versus a design document looking into specific standards, and also acknowledges the need to consult STAC, boards like yourself, and really collaborate with MDT on these projects. So here's kind of a couple options for you all today. You can go ahead and accept the roundabout policy as written. Feel free to suggest some edits or changes, and you also have the opportunity to send it back to the roundabout committee for further discussion. Any recommended action will be taken forward to City Council. We don't have that date yet, but it will most likely be early March. We definitely won't get it in by February, but that's kind of the direction it will move forward, and hopefully we'll get something adopted by them before the end of the year. So I'll answer any questions that you may have best to my ability. I've only been here for 6 months, but I'm sure that Ben, Bob, whoever else might be able to answer anything that I can't. So, yeah, any questions? Yeah?
Yeah, given that as I'm looking at the thing on the roundabouts, about halfway down, total crash reduction of 35%, 75%, reduction in fatal or injury-related crashes. Now, this is probably 95% better, just involving 2 motor vehicles rather than motor vehicles and pedestrians. Is there any kind of breakdown to that you're aware of?
There is. It's part of, let me see if I have it acknowledged here in the actual copy. There is a little bit more in that NCHRP report that I can forward to you if you're interested. I can also just get you those values. So.
One of the things that is just kind of coming up in my head is if, I always go with the basic tenet that safety trumps convenience. And obviously if there's a significant safety improvement in terms of crashes, and then there's an inconvenience and possibly safety aspect, I'm not sure, with dealing with visually impaired people trying to get across at the roundabouts, or people in wheelchairs end up going an extra distance perhaps, etc. I'm wondering if there's any kind of a format or rubric that you use to try to balance out those 2 possibly conflicting goals.
Yeah. Ben, do you have anything to add on that?
I think I can respond a bit to that.
Yeah.
Given the discussions that went on over this resolution in the committee over the past year or so, there's definitely, get my brain back on track, concern, and one of the issues was that this is a resolution of encouragement of exploring the use of roundabouts. It's not to be considered any kind of a design document in any way. It's just an encouragement and reinforcing the state resolution of encouraging the exploration of use of roundabouts and incorporating in that some degree of accommodation of those who are not as comfortable with roundabouts as others. So those pedestrians that have particularly visual problems that are not comfortable dealing with a roundabout, we've discussed, and this comes forward more in the discussion of the best practices and best designs that are current at the time that any roundabout would be designed. So those would be discussed and dealt with at that point, rather than in this resolution of higher elevation kind of look at the recommendation. That help?
Yeah, mostly. I'm just wondering, as these things are considered, yeah, it's a matter of saying we want this to be considered and go through a whole vetting process, if you will. I was just trying to ascertain what type of, how these 2 possibly conflicting things might balance out. In other words, if you say that, well, roundabouts would be good for X, Y, and Z, but they make things more difficult for groups C and D or whatever, how do the values and safety/convenience of one match up against the other one in case they might tend to go in opposite directions? I don't know that they do go in opposite directions. I'm just trying to figure out if there's some type of a formula or construct that's actually being used. I'm assuming there is. I'm just not sure what it is.
At this point, the committee didn't get into that depth. That would be more in the staff design review process and evaluation as any particular intersection was being evaluated to determine if there's a potential for, without too much inconvenience, a sight impaired person going a half a block down to cross at a different kind of a designated crossing to make it more convenient, more appropriate.
And just to piggyback on what Bob said, that was one thing that was added to the policy kind of near the end, was STAC members actually wanted to have it explicitly written out that these boards would be addressed in those decisions past just staff design. So, yeah.
Any other questions, comments for Tara? I think this is a fantastic thing to reinforce, and as Bob and you guys were saying, encourage that exploration of the roundabouts in town and for different projects. So I guess I'd like to.
Basically, we would like your support if we can bring that forward. Otherwise, we'll take any comments either today or via email.
Right, I was going to say if folks are in agreement, I would like to move to accept this resolution as stated. And whoops. Okay, thanks, Bob. Bob's keeping me in order for these first couple of meetings. I guess I cannot make a motion. So,
just one other thing, it just came to my mind because you're thinking about going back to the whole thing with the bike lanes. And the roundabout I'm most familiar with is the one at Beckwith and Higgins, South Higgins. And when you get there, the bike lanes disappear, and you need to merge into the regular flow of traffic to go and use the roundabout or go to a sidewalk if you want to go that route. Is that the way that anticipated roundabouts are going to be also done, or I haven't seen very many places where a bike lane actually becomes part of a roundabout. So
It's like Ben wants to take that one. I'll let him.
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit. So at all of our modern roundabouts in town, we provide two options for bicyclists. One is merging into traffic, or we also put in a curb cut so that they can get on the sidewalk and then cross in the pedestrian space. It is against MUTCD and against design standards, or AASHTO design standards, to have a bike lane in a roundabout. And the reason is that every movement that you make out of a roundabout is a right turn. And so if you were to put a bike lane in, you're setting a bicyclist up to be right hooked for however many exits you have of a roundabout.
yeah, no, I wasn't trying to suggest it. I was just maybe part of it is that maybe it comes down to educating both bicyclists and motor vehicle drivers. First of all, for the bicyclists, if they're going to make that merge into that they signal their intent to move out of the bike lane into a traffic lane or some other things, because I've seen some people at that roundabout kind of get there and all of a sudden, boom, they're over. And I've seen a couple close calls. And usually it's, from my point of view, it's the cyclist's fault, because all of a sudden they just realize, oh, there's no lane in here anymore, and they go out a lot of times without checking. So maybe that's one of the things we need to, either through signage or something else. It's probably not that big of a problem. Obviously, if you haven't had any, injury crashes or something, you might say there's not a problem there, but it certainly lends itself when bike lanes end seemingly abruptly, or even with the sign saying bike lane ends, then the cyclist is left to maybe make a right in the moment decision about where to go and how quickly to go there, and whether or not they need to signal, and where they're going to check for traffic. All those things that a lot of people, especially new to cycling and depending on bike lanes, aren't aren't too comfortable with.
All right, thanks for comments, Gene. Go ahead, Bob.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that the Bike Ped Advisory Board of Missoula support adoption, or at least support the movement forward of this draft resolution regarding roundabouts to City Council for eventual adoption by the City of Missoula.
Second.
All right, thank you, too. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Say nay.
Thanks.
And no abstentions. All right. Thank you, Bob. That motion passes unanimously. And thank you, Tara, for coming to present that for us today. All right, so moving along, Ben is going to talk a little bit about the 5th, 6th recommendation, right? Or no, am I? I can do it.
Yeah, I was going to hope that
Sorry.
either you or Bob could do it, just since it's a previous board thing.
Sure, so I'll introduce it quick, and then Bob, if you have any additional comments, feel free to jump in. So what we have is the recommendation on the matter of 5th and 6th Streets reconfiguration, and this was a recommendation that was passed by the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Board on December 6, 2016. So this was after that initial round of studying the different options for 5th and 6th. And when they came back, we took a look at them and made our recommendation. So I don't know, do we want to read through it, or has everyone had a chance to read through it? Basically, it sums up at the end in saying that we recommend, the board recommend that the City of Missoula, in coordination with the Montana Department of Transportation, pursue implementation of option 1C of the 5th and 6th Streets Function and Safety Analysis Memorandum as soon as practicable. Excuse me. Bob, do you want to jump in and just remind folks, I think we've said it, but what 1C entails?
I'd leave that to Ben to describe that a little more.
Okay,
Again.
so just as a quick rehash of last month's description of the 5th, 6th project, several years ago, City Council identified some funding to look at 5th and 6th Streets and how they work, because residents in the Riverfront neighborhood especially were dissatisfied, complained of speeding, bad pedestrian environment, specifically the double threat when one lane of traffic stops but then the other one doesn't, lack of adequate bike facilities, especially in the eastbound direction, and crashes, and particularly property damage, but all sorts of crashes due to kind of every lane at their minimums. And so in studying that, there were some what's happening today, and then we looked at, the consultant looked at 5 different options for how it could be reconfigured. 3 of those were different variations of a single lane for 5th and 6th. 2 of them were different variations of converting them back to two-way travel. Option 1C is one of the single lane options. What differentiates it from the others is that it includes a single lane for the length of the blocks, and then with a bike lane taking up a lot of the space that the current travel lane occupies. The rest of the space would then widen out the parking lanes a little bit so that people who live on those streets or who park there to go to the businesses can feel a little more comfortable getting in and out of their cars. And then what differentiates 1C from the other options that do a single lane is that at the signalized intersections, it widens back out and includes full turn lanes. So for example, at 5th and Orange, there would be a right turn lane, a straight through lane, and a left turn lane, and a bike lane at that intersection. So in the transportation safety and function analysis, or transportation function safety analysis, They did modeling on that and found that that would have little to no impact on current levels of vehicular congestion. And one of the reasons that is that 5th and 6th Street are way under their capacity for motor vehicles, and the amount of the traffic volumes on 5th and 6th are not rising in any appreciable manner. In fact, on 6th Street, they were lowering over 5 years' time. So there's some sense that this option 1C would have, again, very little impact on vehicular travel while improving things for the neighbors and as a safety project, especially for pedestrians. The reason that this is coming up now is that City Council is going to be asked in the not too distant future to kind of make a decision. If this is something they want to pursue, then this summer would be a time to do it, following a chip seal, and then the restriping could happen after that. And we'd want to know that council wants to do it now so that we can have time to work with MDT to gain all of the necessary approvals, because ultimately 5th and 6th Street are on the state system, and so they would have, they'd be able to tell us no if it's something that we want to do. And so the 4 contiguous neighborhoods, Riverfront, University, Rose Park, and Franklin to the Fort, have all written letters of support suggesting the city should implement this project. And the Bike Ped Board wrote one a year ago saying, recommending the city implement the project. And so I think what the goal of the agenda item today is to either reaffirm that that recommendation or modify it in some way to reflect a year's worth of new information, or or whatever, however the board wants to, or choose not, to go back on it for some reason.
The bicycle lane would be on the right-hand side, correct?
Correct, it would be on the right-hand side.
So when you've got at your intersections where you've got your dedicated right turn lane, the bicycles are allowed to legally make a become through traffic in the right turn lane? Will they
There's
need
a
to?
bike lane in between the through lane and the right turn lane.
Okay, so it'll be a sandwiched bike lane there. Will there be any shifting over, or is it?
No, the shift will be the vehicles will have to wait and shift across the bike lane.
Right
Yep.
lane. Okay, cool. That's right.
Could I just make, I think, one change, or talk about one change possibly to the letter? Just I guess it's numbered 1 at the very bottom. Now, therefore, the Missoula Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Board recommends. On the second line, instead of saying in coordination with the Montana Department of Transportation, pursue implementation of option 1C. What if we just say implement 1C? That way, it's just a little more clear. We've been pursuing implementation of this for a while now. Let's implement it. I mean, anything can be construed to be pursuing implementation.
All right, thanks, Danny. Any other? You got something, Gene?
Yeah,
All right,
and
go
then
ahead.
the last word, practicable, that's one that just always throws everybody, and I just think it's very, I'm not sure if antiquated is the right use, but I think as practical actually is a better fit on that.
One other suggestion is that we just update members with the bicycle pedestrian advisory board.
Ben, this project would be completed with the next chip sealing, right?
This summer.
Yeah, which takes place at late July, early August. And so the chips would be on the ground for 3 weeks or so, a month, and then it would be able to be striped after that.
Do you think we could replace as soon as practicable with,
A period?
or the next chip sealing,
Sure.
just to be a little more definite?
So what I've got for an update here is that in coordination with Montana Department of Transportation, implements option 1C of the 5th, 6th Streets Function and Safety Analysis Memorandum with the next chip seal and striping project.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah? Okay. And then Peter, I've got your note too about updating the board members.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments, questions, clarifications? Okay. I think those are all good. So I think our next step would be typing this up and get it sent, or can we move to adopt it? Okay. All right.
I'll move to adopt the changes and approve the new letter.
A second.
I second.
All right. Oh, Bob beat you to it. All right, so the motion on the table is to adopt an updated recommendation, basically saying the same thing, but just asking that Montana Department of Transportation implement option 1C of the 5th, 6th Streets Function and Safety Analysis Memorandum with the next chip seal and striping project. All right, any further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? And no abstentions. All right, the motion passes unanimously, and I'll clean that up in a document and send it out to everybody. Thank you. All right, moving along. The last one on number 6 there, 2018 draft project list. And I was really excited when Ben said we were going to get a chance to take a look at this. This is, as I said in the email this morning, this is basically some of the earliest we've ever received, the draft project list. So kudos to Ben and staff for getting that together and allowing us to take a peek for today's meeting. So I know this is some of the first look you guys have had at it. If we want to take a minute or two to peruse through it, it sounds great. Today, I think we're just starting off with general comments, questions. Ben, if you have any more to add, please do. And then in further meetings at our next COW meeting, we'll talk about it in more detail. And then also at the next full meeting as well. So.
Yeah, so a brief background for new folks especially. The last few years, the Bike Ped Board has had an opportunity to look at the infrastructure list for the upcoming construction season and make some recommendations to the city about specifically basically to follow our own policies regarding how to consider bike facilities in the wake of a striping project or a project that necessitates restriping a roadway. And so one of the things that we've heard from the Bike Ped Board is, A, please get us the list a little bit earlier. So if there's any project that may be controversial, like say the Linda Vista Boulevard one was, that we can get out in front of it and do the public outreach and evaluation necessary to reach as many folks and get as much buy-in as possible. And then also there were some questions about formatting. It was very geared towards, I think the Public Works Department, when they put this together, it's really they're thinking about the materials that they use and the amount of stuff that's going to be torn up at any given time, and they think less about what's going to get put back. And so the board has made recommendations to do a better job communicating what sorts of striping might go back in the future. And so while we are striving to do that, we also had some turnover in the engineering office, and so there was a minor ball droppage as to who was putting together the project list and what form was it going to take this next year. So while we got a draft to the board earlier than we usually do. Usually it's March at the earliest that I get it to this group. You'll notice it does not include maps in the document like it has in the past, and we still haven't made some of the changes that the board recommended, such as including where we're going to add bike facilities and things like that. So we have every intention of, by the time we get a final project list, that it will include all of those things. But for now, I just wanted to put this in front of you so that you can start seeing what some of the projects are that are happening, and we can together identify the areas where we might be able to address bike and ped concerns, whether it's striping crosswalks or striping bike lanes or adding sharrows in a place where they currently are or they currently aren't, that sort of thing. And so, yeah, I guess as you look at it, if you have questions, please feel free to ask me. I may or may not know. I will be able to tell you that I've identified a couple things on here for conversations that I still have to have with engineering and traffic services folks. The big one that I see is Great Northern Ave from Mullen to West Broadway. That is a collector. It sees a lot of vehicles per day. The full length of it is being overlaid. And it's a fairly wide road that currently allows parking on both sides. We need to look at the possibility of striping bike lanes either within that parking or if it would necessitate parking removal, and is that possible, and how would we go about that? And so that is on this first list, the city projects mill and overlays. That's the first one that I have my eye on. Now let me back up a little bit. Mill and overlay is a term that means that you grind the first couple inches of asphalt. You're not totally reconstructing the road. Asphalt is typically about 4 inches thick on the collector arterial roads. So for a mill and overlay, we would grind an inch or two of it off, leaving it grooved and then putting new asphalt over that. So it doesn't require rebuilding the whole surface. It doesn't require any curb work, but it will require restriping it when it's done.
Tar and then gravel up.
See, Peter knows even better than I do. Yeah, there's probably a tacking surface between the new asphalt. Oh, no, well, the overlay is just new asphalt, and then the chip seal is tar and then gravel over it, yep. So this work is done to prepare for chip and seal work. So typically, a year after we do mill and overlay, we'll come back and we'll do chip seal. So of the projects that are on this first page, those are ones that, if it's something that we do want to pursue, we potentially have longer, we potentially have a year and a half before finalizing what the striping would look like on that. Because the work would happen this summer, it would get striped after that, but then it would get chipped. So all that striping would just get chipped over the following year, and then we'd have a chance to do that again. Now, we use waterborne striping, so it really is that's not like we're throwing good money after bad. It's pennies of paint in the grand scheme of things. The next page, the annual street maintenance program chip and seal. These are ones that have either already been milled and overlaid or don't quite require it, but do want some pavement preservation in the form of a chip seal. Again, it's worth looking at collectors and whether or not they have facilities now, and if we want to consider them at that time. An example is Scott Street from the south side of the bridge to Broadway. That has bike lanes from the south side of the bridge until the roundabout. What do we do between the roundabout and Broadway? Is there an opportunity to get bike lanes there? And if so, what does that look like? So that's one that's on my mind already for that. Old Fort Road from South Ave to Fort Missoula Road. That functions as a collector. Does it actually connect two different facilities in the bike network? Not, well, kinda. There's trail along South Ave, and I guess there's kind of trail along the backside of Community Hospital too. So maybe that's an important one as well. And so is there an opportunity to connect that? So these are the sorts of things that I guess I'd like us to talk about and look at. And again, we'll dive into this in a lot more detail at the Committee of the Whole meeting, where we can just kind of call up a map and start thinking about different designs and different things that we can try and make happen. On flipping pages now, on the curb and sidewalk installation projects, Cowper, Sherwood, Grant, and Eaton, those are all part of the Community Development Block Grant Program that we wrote and received last year to help connect gaps in those neighborhoods, in the West Side and Franklin of the Fort neighborhoods. I believe you have a bunch of information about that project, and you've seen that already. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer them. Van Buren Street, this is part of phase 3 of the project that started back in 2013, that was from basically right just north of the interstate, Poplar or Vine maybe, all the way up. It ended at Lilac, and we took a break for a couple years to focus on some other areas of town and to give the Rattlesnake residents a little break in construction. However, this year the roundabouts project is happening, and so we're going to do phase 3 of the Van Buren project. That will go from Lilac up to just north of Missoula Ave. It will include a designated left turn bay to turn onto Missoula Ave while also squaring up that intersection, and so making it less of just a drift onto Missoula and maybe speed down it. Instead, you're going to have to get out of the lane of traffic, make a full right-hand or full left-hand turn, and then make basically a full right-hand turn to go up Missoula. So currently, there's some concern among residents that that's a cut-through or will be more of a cut-through in the future. I think that the geometry of the intersection is going to actually reduce the instances of cut-through traffic at that location. Also, as part of that project, it will get the irrigation ditch on the west side of the street between Missoula Ave and Holly Street. So that one block section there will be buried in a culvert, and then there will be 10-foot shared use path on that west side of the street. So people who use Jackson or Greeno Park instead of Van Buren, but then want to get onto Missoula Ave to continue biking up the Rattlesnake, will be able to do that without having to cross Van Buren and then cross Van Buren again, or without having to share a narrow sidewalk with people walking. They'll just be able to use a shared use path for that one block. And the roadway section there that's being constructed will include on-street parking where they can fit it, bike lanes, and travel lanes. It'll look a lot like the sections that have already been done, just a little to the south of this area. And then there are some sidewalk replacements on Higgins between South Ave and Patty Creek Drive, especially on the west side of Higgins. There, I don't know if you've walked in that area, but there are some bad panels, and a lot of that needs replaced. Driveway is at bad angles, doesn't meet ADA, and so that is being addressed this year. The Missoula Redevelopment Agency also tries to do sidewalks in their urban renewal districts when they can, and so they are doing some in URD 2, which is mostly the kind of riverfront and neighborhood, basically between Orange and Russell, and from 3rd up to just north of the river. And so they're doing some sidewalks on streets in that area that don't have them. And then the Montana Department of Transportation will be doing an ADA project. So they are upgrading all their curb ramps in the corridors noted here to meet ADA. So it's quite a substantial amount of work, a multi-million-dollar project to upgrade those corners. We, meaning the city and MRA and Downtown Association, are working closely with them to minimize impacts to downtown events, to hopefully set up for enhancement features, not just complying with ADA, but minimizing crossing distances or calling more attention to pedestrian crossings where appropriate. And so we'll see construction begin on that in the not too distant future. On the next page, there's a potential traffic calming circle going in at Cleveland and Crosby over in the Slant Streets neighborhood. The neighbors there have been working on that for about a year. It'll require an SID, a special improvement district, to likely to pay for the construction related costs, but they've already received a neighborhood grant, and there seems to be a lot of momentum to move that forward. Hillview Way will be painted in epoxy this year. So that project was constructed, really construction was finished kind of 2 years ago, then it was chip sealed last year, and then this year it's going to be epoxy painted. The reason that we didn't epoxy paint it last year is that in an effort to make it less slick in bad weather conditions, we inadvertently made it so that paint doesn't stick to it as well, and so we basically had the chip seal on there an extra year so that we can maximize when the epoxy goes down, we can make sure that it goes down well and stays on there for as long as we can. The Missoula County Public Schools received a Transportation Alternatives grant to do a pedestrian project on Gerald Ave that includes, I don't think this is quite right, I don't think it's raised platform crossings on 5th and 6th, I think it's just bulb outs, curb extensions at 5th and 6th. They had written in rectangular rapid flashing beacons, but as you may be aware, those are no longer allowed by federal highways due to a patent issue, not due to an efficacy issue. They're totally effective. There's a patent holder who's aggressively going after the other companies that manufacture those control features and are winning. And so FHWA said, fine, if that's the way it's going to be, then we're not going to allow them on the roads. And so that's still in dispute, and so they won't be included in this project. That project also does include a mid-block raised crosswalk at the new main entrance of Hellgate on the Gerald Avenue side. Other MDT projects, a signal safety project where MDT will add, it won't be a full-blown signal head replacement where they'll do the flashing or the protected left turns and flashing yellows, but it will add reflective tape to the signal heads and improve visibility of the yellow ring around signal heads on Brooks, Higgins, South 6th, and Reserve. Phase 1 of Russell Street begins in the next month or two. Included in phase 1, in fact, I think the very first part of the project will be the Milwaukee Trail undercrossing of Russell Street. And so I've been working with Parks on responding to their current detour plan, which is mostly there, just needs a little bit of work, of attention to the pedestrian movements north and south on Russell Street. And then the Van Buren interchange, so that will have two roundabouts installed, it'll have shared use path on both sides of Van Buren through the roundabouts, and and shared use path headed west alongside the north of I-90 or the south side of Gregory Park, heading over towards Jackson Street and Monroe Street. Missoula water projects are new to be included on the list. This is one of the benefits of having mountain water under now City of Missoula water. And so I truthfully haven't had a chance to take a look at the water projects included on this list yet. I know that water projects typically they dig up the road, and so they do require road replacement. It is very likely that anything that's on the water project list, it would be 2 years before it got restriped officially. So again, if we see something on that, we have a little bit more time to potentially address it. Same thing with sanitary sewer projects, which are the last couple on the backside. So I know that was a lot. Please digest, take as much time as you need to, ask any questions. you want, and then we'll really dive in into project specifics at the committee of the whole meeting is my thought. And then we would, if possible, make a, kind of list of basically you guys provide me with some guidance, and then at the March meeting, you would adopt a recommendation that says, hey, Ben, we want you to work on X, Y, and Z with the rest of the folks at the city. And that might even be ambitious. It wouldn't hurt anything if that didn't happen until the April meeting.
Awesome. Thanks, Ben. Thanks for going through all that. So, yeah, chew on a little bit. If you guys have questions throughout the month, send them to the board or to Ben, and we can move forward from there. Go ahead, Bob, and then I saw Jason's hand go up there, too.
I'd just like to say thanks for the reformatting of this report from previous years. It's much easier to read, much more understandable for we lay people that aren't engineers. You did mention that you were going to get the existing or need for bike lanes as another column for in there, so that's definitely something that would be beneficial.
Yep.
I may be mistaken, but in previous years, didn't we get a design plan set for each project?
No, the design, the board, we're struggling. This is something that I'm been remiss on, and it'll happen in the next month, I promise. We're gonna continue the discussions that we began last fall about how do we make the board's input most valuable. And so where we're leaning with that is that it's at design, basically at design concept phase, and then at 30%. And then the idea would be that, board's comments will at that point be included or not, and that staff will be trying to balance the different interests. So no, previously this has included a map of where the projects are, but it hasn't included any design documents.
Okay.
So real quick, Gene, and then we'll jump over to Jason.
Yeah, just in going through this, there's one area, and I guess it's because I live there, that I thought might be on here and isn't in terms of sidewalks. I live on Mansfield, about 3 blocks south of the university, and as I walk down the street, I see the nice little round yellow sign saying "Safe Routes to School," and of course it depicts a bicycle and an adult and a child and somebody in a wheelchair, and yet there's at least 3 or maybe more places at intersections where the curb cuts only are, not only that there's no curb cuts there, that the curbs are close to 8 inches high. So I'm wondering if there's anything, especially given that that's the safe routes to school from the X's, et cetera, up to the university. Are you aware of when that's going to be addressed? Okay.
No. That's a reason to attend the pedestrian facilities master plan meeting, public meeting, because the prioritization of that sort of stuff will be a part of that.
That's when it's on the 15th of March?
21st of February.
21st February, okay, got it.
In conjunction with that activity, there is an updated section of the Activate Missoula website. If you go to that website, the previous wiki map that was used for the long-range transportation plan has been, parts of that have been incorporated into a new wiki map for pedestrian issues only. And so those comments regarding pedestrians have been carried over to this new map that is still interactive. And so anybody in the world can get to that map and add comments, add indications of problems. There are several layers to that map, some of which will show you the inventory items that were processed this past summer by people actually walking or examining blocks of sidewalks and where there are issues, and those are all indicated on that map. So to encourage anybody that's interested, and hopefully this board members would be able to get to that wiki map and take a look at it, add comments, or bring comments back to the board in the future.
All right, thanks, Bob. Jason, do you have a question? Or?
Could you come up to speak in the mic?
Probably should have just asked to talk to you after. We install a lot of pedestrian crossings, and we do a lot of RFBs. So is this a specific manufacturer that can't make the RFBs anymore, or is it RFBs in general?
No, so RFBs, I'll call them up, the rectangular rapid flashing beacons are just no longer allowed in general. And I think it will likely get solved sooner than later, but for now, we need to pull them out of plans. So these are the symbols that, or these are the things that are at the new trail crossings at the Bitterroot Trail. So they're typically a push button, solar powered. They come with a sign, and then these are the rectangles, and they flash a rapid amber crossing. They get you going. We don't have to pull any of them out that are existing. We just can't put new ones in.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions or initial comments for Ben? Awesome. Well, thanks again for bringing that to us early and getting that rolling. It's nice to have a heads up. So, well, very good. We don't have any new business, so we're on to general comments and announcements of board members. Start with Jeff.
I don't have any.
All right. Well, we're just moving right through you guys. I actually don't have anything either. Let's see. Our next meeting. Oh boy, I don't have the date on me. It's the last Tuesday of February. Does anybody have a calendar on them? 27th. Thanks, Bob. So. All right. Noted. All right, so Tuesday, February 27th, 6:30, right here at Jack Reedy. We'll be getting you guys that information ahead of time. This time, sorry about that last meeting, guys. January escaped me. But anyways, we'll see you then. Thank you guys so much for being here and your comments. And this meeting is adjourned.